disagrees. So the Canadian Council on International Cooperation, which was the umbrella group for so many of the international humanitarian agencies, not to mention so many of the programs directed to the rights of women. All of these are savaged indiscriminately because of this ideological twitch which forever grips the government of Canada. And the fourth area is the attack on the particular provisions, the two-tier wages which you talk about frequently, the benefits, the extraordinary attack on pensions. The Ontario Federation of Labour, Sid, your material is excellent. It really is first rate. I was very, very much taken with the analysis and the content of the reports which have been extended in this convention and which are now available for public scrutiny because of the arguments they make and the way they're made, and the analysis of pensions, the analysis of the value of the Canadian pension plan and the guaranteed income supplement and the old age supplement, the way in which the Canadian pension plan is secured for decades to come, and your agreement with the Canadian Labour Congress that over a period of time phased in the Canadian pension plan rewards, the pensions themselves should be doubled. All of that makes such appreciable sense. We're absolutely obsessed at this moment in time with doing damage to the lives working people lead and future generations of working people lead. I'll never understand it. It's so perverse. I never thought I'd reach this point in life, which resembles a vague maturity, that I would witness such senseless and visceral attacks on the rights of people to have a decent income and a decent retirement. What possesses those who gain satisfaction out of eviscerating the economic possibilities of working people? And then I was very much taken with your emphasis on women and the need to have pay equity and the need to recognize gender equality. And in particular, I was extremely taken with the work that is being done and the support that is being given against gender-based violence, and the way in which, amongst your materials, you emphasize the coming December the 6th and take back the night in order to commemorate the dreadful December 6th massacre that occurred in Montreal so many years ago. And I thought to myself, this is the best of the trade union movement. These are the things that give the trade union movement such legitimacy and authenticity. When you pick up issues that are not immediately part of the normal collective bargaining apparatus, but which everybody understands are an extension of a decent working class movement. And this business of gender-based violence, it has consumed my life over the last 2 or 3 years. The sexual violence and rape directed towards women very much in the developing world, but beyond. There isn't a society which is exempt. I've spent a lot of my time latterly in the Congo, where there is a positive war on women, and where the consequences of rape and gang rape and destructive sexual violence are a nightmare for women. And the whole world knows. They pass resolution after resolution at the Security Council, and they have the largest peacekeeping force in the world in the Congo, over 20,000 peacekeepers. And they have 12 United Nations agencies ostensibly unified in protecting the women and preventing the violence, and it's never prevented. And it's never prevented because it's women. It's important to understand that insufferable reality of gender inequality, which does damage in every society, has consequences at times which are absolutely shocking in their implications. I was in the Congo last February. I was attending the opening of something called the City of Joy, which is a little housing complex of 100 homes where the women who had had their reproductive tracts surgically repaired in one of the hospitals adjacent to the little housing complex, they could convalesce in the housing complex so they could learn a trade, go back to their communities and try to pull their lives together. And there were 3,000 women gathered. I'll never forget it. Every single one of whom had been brutally raped. And the governor of the province of the Kivus, as it's called, was there with all his hangers-on and sycophants and satraps. And one of the young women who took the platform, she couldn't have been more than 20 or 21, she looked out at the governor and she said, "Mr. Governor, you know why this is happening. You know that if this was happening to men, it would have ended 15 years ago. It's happening to women." I really honor and salute you for your emphasis on gender-based violence, because it is a scourge which infects the entire world. And I also honor you, number 6, for the protection of LGBT rights. It's one of the great human rights struggles left in this world. And it also remains a terribly important struggle to wage. I was really impressed by the way in which sexual orientation played a part in the analysis of the rights of the workforce and how the OFL and its member unions wanted to respond. It's terribly tough dealing with these issues. It's heartbreaking to see the discrimination and stigma visited on people purely and solely because of sexual orientation. There was a meeting of the Commonwealth countries, 54 countries, in Perth, Australia, just 2 weeks ago, and they had an expert committee report in front of them begging them to decriminalize the anti-homosexuality laws, which are found in 41 of the 54 countries, and in some instances, consensual homosexual exchanges can be subject to the death penalty. It's absolutely staggering. And I work with a little organization in the United States which just recently brought the first ever challenge to the anti-homosexuality law in Jamaica before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, because we believe if we can win that, as we think we will, we can change the atmosphere of sodomy laws in the neighborhood. Feelings of marginalization and discrimination which are felt by our sisters and brothers in the gay and lesbian and trans communities. In the city of Montego Bay, in Jamaica, last April, there was a huge concert featuring the reggae performer Sizzla, whose homophobic derangement and his murder music, as it is called, has denied him entry to the United States, United Kingdom, Canada. And sure enough, he got to the platform and he sang the song he always sings, calling for the murder of gays in Jamaica and beyond. And the entire concert was sponsored by Coca-Cola. And there he stood on the platform with a Coke Zero sign behind him while he advocated the killing of gay people through his music. So, my little group, we went after Coca-Cola. We went after them no holds barred, demanding full-page advertisements of apologies, demanding a complete review of all the contractual relationship with performers, demanding that they support a pro-gay musical concert at the International AIDS Conference in Washington next year. And we have been dealt with as though we were some kind of inconsequential nitwits at the periphery of their cerebros, if they have any brains. And we're now going to ratchet it up because we can't get from them the necessary responses from an organization. Oh, they've said they will someday take out advertisements, and they've said they're looking after all of their contracts around the world. They're going to redesign, but 6 months have passed. Nothing identifiable has emerged. I don't know whether it's appropriate to call for a ban on Coke if I give up solid Coke. But I think some of the Coca-Cola in Canada know that you're fed up with it. And if you want the opinion of someone who is a highly sophisticated previous Coca-Cola drinker, Pepsi's not that bad. Number 7, I also appreciated immensely the emphasis on Aboriginal rights, on the rights of people of color, on disability rights. I can't help but remember the report I did way back in 1992 for the then NDP government in Ontario on race relations in the province of Ontario, and I read what is happening today, the sort of subterranean emphasis on racial activity in some areas that is simply not appropriate, and the sense that people of color still do not have in the workforce and in wages and in education and in opportunity the kinds of priorities and rights they should have. And I think, why do all these things take so long? And I remind you that when it comes to people with disabilities, we now have an international convention, finally, on the rights of disabled persons, and there is no reason in the world for employers to get away with discrimination against disability. And number 8, I think of the way in which you have emphasized preschool, daycare, and how wondrous that period of time can be for a young child. Our younger daughter is unattached, and when she had her little baby boy, whose name is Zimri, I have 3 grandsons. One is Zev, one is Yoav, one is Zimri. You can guess at my ethnic background. And they moved into our home on day 1, and they've been living with us now for 21 months. I am so smitten that I even resent being here, lest I'm not at home when Zimri arrives back from daycare. But I know, as a grandparent watching the emergence of this little guy, how wonderful preschool education is. And I know that in the Globe and Mail today and in the Toronto Star today, the final report of Fraser Mustard, who died just a few days ago, has been issued. And now we see that Quebec, Manitoba, and Prince Edward Island are doing excellent work in the preschool period with young kids at levels which most working families can afford. Sometimes it is entirely free. Ontario, unfortunately, lies somewhere in the middle, and Alberta and Newfoundland bring up the rear. But it is worth noting the tremendous value to a child of good daycare and preschool education, and how, particularly for women in the workforce, it makes all the difference in the world.